Welcome to the North Witch Podcast with your hosts Azariel Flame and Sandra Von Holland. In this podcast, we explore all the things that can help us to be better and improve our lives in body, mind, and spirit. Looking at everything from witchcraft, sorcery, woo-woo, spirituality, biohacking, the mundane, and everything in between. We occasionally have on guests from various backgrounds, practices, and philosophies. We welcome everyone from all walks of life, from the left-hand path to the right-hand path, from the medical to the holistic, from the woo-woo to the scientific, and everything in between. We have conversations and discussions about our experiences over the years, what works for us, what hasn't worked, and explore new theories and science, trying them out, seeing what works, and debunking what doesn't. Thank you for joining us on this wicked adventure along the crooked path as we adventure into the mysterious and wonderful world and welcome what truly works for us to become better witches, sorcerers, magicians, and our best selves so that we can live our best lives. May these conversations help you to ignite the light within. The views expressed by our guests on this podcast do not necessarily reflect the views of us here at Northwich Magic Co. All of the information shared on this podcast is anecdotal and shared for entertainment purposes only, and does not constitute medical or financial advice. Always consult a doctor, physician, or professional in their field before trying any of the things that may be discussed on this channel. Magic and holistic healing should work alongside allopathic care when necessary. All right, welcome to another episode of the North Witch Podcast. And on today's show, we have Amy Blackthorn, the amazing herbalist witch that we cannot keep her books on our shelf. And there is good reason why. Every time I crack one open, they look absolutely amazing. So we're happy to have you here, Amy. And
Thanks so much.
How are things going today?
Amazing. I got to hang out with some people. I went and saw the new Batman movie, and I'm recuperating from writing 2 books last year. My brains are mostly settled back in their home.
That's a big undertaking. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
In between both books, I actually started a novel, so like it's coming out.
So how do you manage all of that? Because just looking at your repertoire here, I mean, you've released 2 books now in the last year. You have your tea shop, you do magic, you teach magic, and I believe you're still doing professional readings and rituals. So like,
Yep.
how do you have any tips or tricks for people that live busy lives on how to manage this? Like, do you have some amazing teas that you make that give you this super juju, or like, what do you got for us?
I'm a double Virgo. So I have a master list and then subset lists to keep me organized for all the other things that I do. It's super cute because my friend Eleanor, who's my graphic designer for the tea shop, at one point I asked her for business cards for different things that I had done so I could print them on demand, and somebody needs some writing, somebody needs some tarot, like I'd have the right card to hand them. And so I got done the list of cards that I needed, and there was like 30 cards there. I'm never going to print that many business cards. And so I just scrolled back up to the top and said, anyone that says I do stuff. And she made them. She made like 5 different designs for it. And so the witchy shop I was reading for at the time, they traded them like trading cards. It was the cutest thing ever.
That's awesome. Amy Blackthorn, she does stuff.
She does stuff.
Queen of stuff.
That's fantastic. So what got you onto this crazy journey of botanical awesomeness? Because like you are releasing things that I have wished were on the market for years, you know, like I grew up reading Cunningham and stuff like that. And, you know, always wanted expansion on that. Like how do we involve this in our cooking? How do we involve this in our teas? How do we make these brews and potions and stuff? And, you know, there was very limited resources out there before, but you've kind of really just been taking it by storm. So like what started the process, and how did you get to where you are today with this?
It's funny. I grew up in Baltimore City, like there's one tree for every 2 or 3 blocks. And we had 5 square feet of grass in the backyard. So when we'd go outside to play, that's it. There's some grass, make stuff happen. So when in the 2nd grade, we moved to the suburbs and we had an acre and 2 trees. Well, the funniest thing happened. We were investigating the yard. You know, I was 2nd grade, so it's like what, 8, 10. I found we had in the side yard, we had 2 azalea bushes. I didn't know they were azaleas at that point. But I see these beautiful pink flowers and this lush bush in the middle of this yard. And I'm thinking, okay, this is cool. I've never really seen anything like this. So I sit down, like I'm gonna have a conversation with this azalea, and I'm looking at the flowers and the petals, and I bump into one of the flowers, and it falls out, and I think, oh crap, I broke it. And I look in the little cup where this beautiful flower fell out of, and there's a little black seed. And it's like the universe opened up and poured directly into my brain. I'm like, plants make flowers that make seeds. Like, it's a whole contained system. And I was blown away. I had to know everything about plants from that minute on. Like, I'm going to the neighbors, asking to do chores for pocket change. Next thing you know, I'm pedaling my bike back from the grocery store where I have a 5-pound bag of soil and a window box and a 6-pack of petunias, riding home because I wanted to grow my own stuff. I wanted to make this happen because this is magic. Like, there was dirt before and now there's flowers. Absolute magic. So fast forward a few years and I am 11, sharing a bedroom with my older sister who is 14. And her best friend come home one day. Her best friend is all very worldly. She had spent the summer in Italy with her parents. And so they're giggling and sneaking, saying bad words in Italian. And they come upstairs and they're very concerned over Holly's book bag. And they're whispering and they're giggling. I'm like, okay, the easiest way, anyone who has a younger sibling can tell you, to get your sibling involved in your business is tell them to go away. Now I gotta know what they've got. Like, it might be some really good candy, I'm figuring. So I gotta figure out what's in there. I gotta get in. And so that night, her friend goes home. House settles down for the night. And myself, like the Pink Panther, slink out of my bed, tippy-toe across the floor on my fingertips, and sneak open her book bag one tooth at a time. God forbid I get caught. You know, that's it. That's the end of it for me. And I peek in her book bag, and it's Cunningham's Wicca Guide for Solitary Practitioner. So I sneak it back to my side of the room, and I read this thing by the light of the gas station down the street. Just not even, I'm not even risking a flashlight here. And it was the best thing ever. I was like, okay, all this stuff that I had been thinking should be a thing actually is a thing. We had been going to whatever church was close by, just so our parents had like some time to themselves on Sunday mornings. So it didn't matter what it was just close. So I'm thinking, okay, this is the stuff that I've been thinking in my head, that I've been waiting for somebody to like hand it to me. And I found it on my own. So the next thing I know, I'm walking to the library every day anyway. I could just wander over to the nonfiction section after I finish with my fiction sections. So I read everything I could get my hands on in the 133s. And I never looked back. By the time I was 15, my parents had divorced and then each remarried different people. And so I lived with my mom and my stepdad, and said, hey, like, I'm a witch. My mom had zero reaction because she's got 4 kids. She knows everything's a phase if you're a parent. She says, okay, well, have you told your dad? She sends me outside to talk to my stepdad. He's building a trellis for clematis. And I said, so Johnny, I'm a witch. And he looks me right in my face, smiles, and says, oh, I dated a witch in high school. How was your day? Like, nonplussed. Like, he is cool as a cucumber. Love that man.
That's fantastic.
And I kept waiting for it to be this big thing, and it wasn't even a thing.
That's great.
So then were they so encouraging to you after that?
Oh yeah. My mom bought my first Athame. We would go to at that point, it was the late 90s, so the closest place that I knew of was Belgian and Kindle in Baltimore. And it was just the sweetest thing, because my mother says, okay, this is your big news. I don't want to give away your news, but I really want my best friend Mickey to know. Like, I need to tell somebody. Can we like go over there and you tell her you're a witch so I can talk to her about this? Sure. Hey Mick, guess what? I'm a witch. Go do your thing. Well, once I told Mickey, she says, I gotta tell somebody. Okay, like, knock yourself out. I'm gonna tell Miss Melanie. That's it. She got the gleam in her eyes, like the social capital that she's constructed for herself just by having a kid for a witch. And her best friend says, oh, me too. So now all of a sudden we had this thing where I could get shipped down to her house for the weekend, and my mom and my stepdad could hang out and be grown-ups, and I could have my witch time. Yeah, she went to the witchy store for Yule and bought my very first athame, a little pewter thing with a cat handle, really adorable. And my Aunt Peep, we went there. She'd go and pick out things from the witchy store for my. Everybody was super cool about it.
So awesome. So then tell us how your path became like to be the amazing Amy and be this incredible author, and just that you just keep, they just keep coming from you. It's just, it is amazing how your knowledge is just growing and growing and growing. You just keep sharing with the world. It's fantastic.
The first thing I think about when I want to sit down and work on a new project is, what is the book that I wish I had for 14-year-old Amy, for 15-year-old Amy? Like, what is the stuff I wish I'd had when I started doing this? And that's where it starts. There's a lot of books that have a lot of different information available, but the things that I was looking for didn't exist. There was some Cunningham and there was some other neat stuff to go about, but it wasn't the depth that I was looking for. Like, I'm looking at my copy of the Encyclopedia of Magical Aromatherapy by Cunningham, and it's a little pamphlet on each plant. So there's a ton of plants in there, but there's a paragraph maybe about each one. And with the prevalence and the availability of magical materials that we have right now at this point in our lives is incredible. If I had had access to the essential oils that I have now 20 years ago, my God, I take over the world. So I want to write the things that I needed at that point, because I know that if I'm writing for who she was and what she needed, somebody else is going to need that. And so when you're first starting with a proposal, and you're looking at what I'm going to write and how you're going to take care of these pieces, things like word counts are completely nebulous, and that you have no frame of reference for it. 85,000 words just sounds like a big number.
Right.
Yeah. There's no listing that says, hey, this book is this many numbers and this book is this many numbers, so you can compare and contrast. You're just like, I think this. So putting together Botanical Magic was a huge undertaking for somebody who had never written anything more than, a 20-page paper in college. But it was something that I had wanted a book with my name on it since before I could write my name. Little, like kindergarten, preschool Amy, like I had stories that lived in my chest that I really wanted to get out. I just found a copy online of my middle school yearbook for the 8th grade. And in that, what are you going to be when you grow up section, just said award-winning author. And damn if I didn't do it.
Wow, isn't that fantastic?
I just
love that.
I always thought it would be stories. I thought it would be fiction before nonfiction. But I've always had this need to get out all the things that live in your chest and need to be out in the world. And this was just my way of getting there. Some people draw it out, some people sing it out. I needed to write it.
I love that you're writing it to who you used to be. That is so, it's just so powerful that way, right? So
Yes.
You're impactful because you know that path already.
I was really lucky with Protection Magic, which came out last Tuesday. I never thought that I'd get to do something like this, because I've worked in executive protection as my day job, almost 2 decades. And I've gotten to be Amy the Witch full-time for different jobs, but I've never gotten to get those two people in the same room. So when I talked to my editor, we've been friends for 10 years before I started with Wiser, before any of that. And she said, I wanted to write a book on Protection Magic because it's my whole gig. When she proposed it, once you write a proposal, they take it to the pub board. They say, hey, this is what Amy wants to write. This is what the market looks like, and do we think we can sell this? It's super easy, very general. And she threw in that I worked in executive protection and private security for however long, and that I taught self-defense classes, and all these other mundane teaching things aside from the witchy teaching things. And so they put in physical self-defense in the proposal, in the title, and I was like, oh, I can write, I can put those two people in the same room. So all but one of the chapters, different magical practices, and accept what you expect to find in a book on protection magic. But in the middle, chapter 6 is real world things. Like, how many people have quick set locks on their front door? 75% of all new home constructions use quick set locks. So everyone knows how to pick them. So don't buy quick set. I like Slage because they know they're being picked. They've got tighter allowances. So it's harder to pick them, which makes it harder for somebody to get in your house. Like, that's the stuff that I do during my day that I would never think I'd get allowed to talk about in a witchy book. So I talk about situational awareness, and I talk about the safety things you can do around your house to incorporate plants, but aren't necessarily strictly magical. Like putting an ivy around the front steps to keep away burglars. Growing a holly tree. They're supposed to keep away lightning, but no burglars are going to hide in the holly tree. Anyone's ever been within 5 feet of a holly knows how sharp they are.
Yes.
Burglars not going to hide out in a holly. That's a sucky way to do it. So it's great, the different pieces that you can put together as a person. And I get to be all of me in one book. I never thought I'd get to do any of that because it's so compartmentalized. Security is a very conservative field. I don't get to be Amy Blackthorn at work, but now that I get to work full time, I got to bring some of that other Amy in, and I'm really excited about it.
I bet that feels amazing, like super, even more powerful for you, right? Because now you actually get to be whole Amy now. I bet that's a great thing for you.
The funny thing is, right before I left my last station, I had someone in my office who I don't talk about Amy outside of work. I just go to work and do work things. I had 20 officers that reported to me. I was responsible for 35 floors of human lives. I've got to be able to be on my job. So I'm not doing my nails and answering the phone and talking about, what a bad day I had at my hairdresser appointment. Because I didn't talk about Amy outside of work, one of the guys that reported to me decided to figure out what I was hiding. And so I come into work. It's 5 a.m, which is a ridiculous time to have to be anywhere. I come in. I always relieve the guy at the front desk. I get my radio. I sign into all that stuff. He goes to the basement and relieves the guy who's in front of the cameras all night so he can go home. So I walk in, I get my radio, I clock in, and the gentleman in question, "Oh, hi, how you doing?" "Fine, how are you?" Nothing caught on fire overnight. And he says, "So," he's very self-satisfied, very proud of himself. He says, "So you're a witch, huh?" You could have heard a pin drop because my brain just starts freaking out. Who does he know? Who did he talk to? Delaware is exactly this big. There's less than 1 million people in the state of Delaware. So everyone knows everyone because the state is this big. At the narrowest point, Delaware is 12 miles wide. Small state. So I'm thinking, who does he know? Because I've been Amy the Witch out in the world since I was 18 with half of the state. No, he didn't know anyone. He just did some little security magic and said, "Oh, look, here's this Amy Blackthorn person. She looks awful lot like my boss." And I'm thinking, well, crap. I can't recover. There's no coming back from that. He winds up going downstairs, and I know the minute he walks in the door, he's going to start talking to the rest of the people in the building. By 10 a.m., half of the building was like, "Oh, did you hear Amy's a witch? Did you hear this?" He did not, he might now understand at that point how dangerous those words are. He just thinks he's proud of himself because he figured out the big secret. It does not occur to him that there are people who think it is their duty and completely appropriate to threaten to unalive someone who is of a different religion than they are. So it was a very busy week, I will say. But it's very interesting to find the lengths that people will go to if you tell them, "Hey, this isn't about you. Like, This is not for you. I talk quite a bit in Protection Magic about the different things that have happened just because someone found out I was a witch. I mean, I've been run off the road into oncoming traffic. I had a man show up at my house with a claw hammer to threaten to kill my pets and burn down my house. Like, being a witch is not, it's not for cred points. Like, this is real life. It can be interesting.
Right. And some people just set some right off the rails and thinks that it's okay to be in other people's business and treat them poorly or differently or.
So then with that too, then Amy, and with your experience in security and martial arts and everything else, and then obviously having your personal life somewhat invaded once people found out who you are, do you have any tips or tricks for our listeners maybe on how to perhaps protect their magical self in mundane ways, or to protect their mundane self in magical ways, like kind of the two-way street thing, you know what I mean?
I absolutely love it. Yes. One of my favorite ones is to create a replica of your home, not necessarily a dollhouse, but my favorite way is taking a very crude blueprint of your home and make a mirror box to put it in, to keep everything, even the little yous and whoever else lives in your home, in that box so that they're safe and they're protected. The mirrors reflect anything really negative that's directed at you or your home, anyone inside of it. You can fill it with protective herbs that speak to what you're looking for. I really love working with lavender, not just because it chills everyone out, but it helps keep the air clean in that it doesn't allow secrets to remain hidden. Like, it brings them out and gives them the air to speak. Makes it so that people are comfortable enough and feel safe enough to bring out those things that they may have wanted to keep secret in a healthy and really impactful way. So you can keep your mundane self in that box of magic. You can also create the avatar of your magical self to keep in that very, very nice box. I actually got a mirror box when Bombay company near us was closing. It's just a jewelry box that's mirrored on the outside, and it makes a lovely little bed of cedar and lavender, frankincense tears to give it some oomph, and a little bit of cinnamon to make it go. But it makes a great project that you can do with small kids, all the way up to, just mom and dad at home, making sure that everyone within those walls is safe and well and protected and whole.
That's
I
fantastic.
love that.
I love that.
Where do we find that, Amy? In which one of your awesomeness? In the
in Blackthorn's Protection Magic.
Nice.
So I broke it up into 3 pieces because there's a lot of books on protection magic out there. Like, a lot of people talk about Dion Fortune's psychic protection, and there's a lot of different pieces, but I wanted to make sure that it was a whole system, in that we're talking about protection for your mind, body, and spirit. So mind has psychic defense drills in it. It's got how to keep yourself safe if you're out walking alone. I talked to Matt Oren about, we talked about our favorite psychic projections for when we're feeling vulnerable and by ourselves. He talks about projecting the voice of an angry barking dog to drive away people with ill intent. One of the ones I talk about in protection magic is, I'm a motorcycle rider. I get out onto wheels, like get away from some people. So my projection is my leather motorcycle safety jacket. It probably weighs 50 pounds. It has protected me through a lot of things. And now that it's been so long that I've worked with it, I can feel that even when it's packed away for the winter, I can project that feeling of the strong, grounding leather jacket to protect me from the things that are going on and out in the world. Those are the really important things. So we talk about physical protection. There's a chapter on plants that you can grow. You can, different shapes of the gardens will grow the magic of your intention, which is protection. You can also then harvest those plants for protection spells later. Indoor gardening with containers and all those little indoor plants that are very popular at the moment. And then the physical section also carries that chapter 6 that talks about bodily protection, how to escape rope, duct tape, zip ties, chains, anything illegal, things that people would not necessarily be allowed to keep you with. So how to pick handcuffs, how to escape chains, how to ditch a stalker, how to know if someone's following you home, what to do if someone's following you home. These are things that I've worked so many years for, and I could at that point only teach, a handful of students in a classroom at a time. That's a lot of classroom teaching. By putting it in the book here and getting that word out, thousands of people can understand what they can do to keep themselves safe right today.
This is great. And what timing that you came out in this, and that in how our world seems so much more chaotic right now.
Yes.
And so perfect timing for the masses, honestly. Right? I'm excited to get it too.
And then Spirit talks about, the Spirit section talks about your emotional well-being, your emotional protection. So it's got things like incense recipes and essential oil recipes for magical oils that you can use for your protection magic. And then the very last section is just all the miscellaneous stuff that I couldn't fit anywhere else.
That's awesome. I absolutely love that you did include the mundane, because, like a lot of people in the magical community, even some experienced people that I know, they always fail to follow up their magical practice with the mundane actions that ensure that it happens. So I was really, really happy to see that in there. And I think that's something that really sets it apart from other protection magic books. And it's a very, very cool take on it. I absolutely love how you went that way with it.
Thank you. When I talked about the physical protection, actively protecting your person, I talked to, a number of people, and the number of people who said, oh, well, yeah, I carry a pocket knife on me. They've never trained with a pocket knife. They just know that if for some reason they needed it, they'd now rise to the level of Jackie Chan and defend themselves with this pocket knife that they've never used. And it's like, I'm sorry, Pumpkin, that's not how that works. You need training, you need to practice. These are perishable skills. I talk about the pros and cons of pepper spray or stun guns for defensive carry. There are so many really great materials out there. They may or may not be legal in your area, so it's definitely the pros and cons list definitely talks about the little minutia that, unless you've taken this class, unless you've practiced with different styles of pepper spray, you wouldn't know that there's a difference. You might not know what those differences are or how to even go about finding out that information. So I really loved being able to offer some of that to someone who wouldn't have known that they didn't know something. When they talk about you don't know what you don't know, that's why it's there.
Absolutely. So what is your next book that is coming out? Because you said you've got another one on the rails there. What is the plans with that one?
So Blackthorn's Botanical Wellness is a discussion and a look at what we need to understand as magical people that self-care leaves out. It's not just, if it was as easy as a bubble bath and a glass of wine, we'd have done that already. There's very specific things that magical practitioners know that we should be doing that we aren't. And there's a way that we can incorporate not just self-care, but the whole of our selves in our practices. I counted probably 20 self-care books in the witchy section in the last 2 or 3 years, especially once the pandemic got in full swing. There's a lot of people saying, oh, it's self-care, we didn't do it. Not a single one of them, not a single one talks about chronic illness. 40% of people, even just in our country, have a chronic illness of one type or another. And there's no discussion of it. There's no impetus for it. Everyone says, oh, they want to pretend that, if you think nice thoughts at your quartz crystals, that you're just going to get better. And that's not the reality for most of the people in this country. So, even diabetes, because it has an understanding and people know what it is for the most part, they don't think of it as a chronic illness. They just think of it as, something my friend's brother's dog walker has. It doesn't have any truth for them unless they actually deal with it on a daily basis. So all of these things were missing from the discussions on where we want to be as magical practitioners. And it was neat. There gets a point when I'm elbows deep in a new book where a specific piece of that will jump out and say, okay, I'm ready to be here. Like in Botanical Brews, I wrote 5,000 words on doing magic with absinthe. I just sat down and was like, okay, this is all the cool stuff we're going to do. And for the wellness book, I actually took some materials and created something I had never seen or heard for before. We're creating a servitor to assign a ritual tool to help us do some of these self-care tasks that I would rather be set on fire than do. I don't want to call a new doctor and set up an appointment for whatever testing, get stabbed with needles. Like, no one wants that. No one wants that at all. But if I had somebody to help me do these things, if I had some backup, make it a little easier. So there's some really neat stuff that's coming out in the wellness book that I didn't expect when I wrote the synopsis for what it is going to be. And those are the neat things that just sort of are born in the back of your head and say, okay, like, I'm ready to be in the world. Let's do this.
That's fantastic. I actually love that idea. That sounds like a great idea. I
Super
need a
excited about
servitor to do that. So now, one thing I have noticed over the last 20 years of me doing this is that it seems like the public eye goes from, nobody would curse me, real witches don't do that because of karma, to, oh my God, everybody on Facebook is fucking cursing me, I need to do this. So what are your tips and tricks for our listeners for discerning if they're actually under attack, if they're having a Facebook disagreement and they're just actually having anxiety, or like, how do you go about discerning it? Especially since you're now a public figure in the occult world, people know you, you've written all of these books. Obviously you face this at work in the mundane world and whatsoever. So can you maybe give some tips or tricks on how you discern this for our listeners?
Absolutely. There's a checklist in protection magic. So if you're really concerned, there's just right in the layer, you count up a scale of 1 to 10. 1 is no, everything's cool, and 10 means you need some professional help. Like there's some stuff happening. The very first thing I look at to see, are you already engaged in a regular protection magic practice? Do you have something that you do weekly, monthly, every full moon to make sure that your space is clear and protected? There's a shocking number of people who do nothing. They wait until something goes wrong and say, oh, I need 37 candles. They don't think about the proactive defensive steps that you need to go through because they think that they'll never need it. It's a very nice thought, but the hexes, really true hexes, might be more rare, but it can happen. So if they are engaged in a regular personal practice, I remind them that it needs to be varied. Doing the same thing every lunar, 1, you'll get burned out, and 2, if you have a purple polka dot monster living in your closet and he only responds to moon water from Taurus, like you don't know that until you get there. Until you get to that point, you can have the magical equivalent of medical resistant staph infection. Like you've got MRSA in Monsterland. So vary your practice. Vary the things that you're using to both protect your house and to cleanse your house, to make sure that even if you've been best friends with Susie, our Pez witch Susie, we've been best friends for 20 years. We have a fight. Susie says, peace, I'm out. If she knows all of my layers of magical practice and protection for my house, she knows how to get around them. Even if even if I never in a million years thought that Susie and I would ever break up, we've been best friends if she knows all your protections, guess what? She knows the keypad to your security system. She knows how to get in without being detected. So varying your practice, making sure those things are proactive rather than reactive are the first 2 things I always talk about. If you have a current practice, keep an eye outside at the very edge of the line of your property to see if something goes wrong out there. Water main, electricity goes out. Those things that could be just a little bit inconvenient, or they could be disastrous. Because if they're happening just outside the little magical border you've drawn around your property, guess what? It's time to up those protections because someone is trying to get in. Your protections are working because it's still happening outside that line, but guess what? Just the right combination of things that can help over that line. So make sure that you can bump up that protection a little bit. One of the things I like to look for is, are you more run down than usual? Is there little annoying things happening inside the house that are, again, not really harmful, but definitely something that could be a problem later? All of your appliances suddenly going to pot. Like, those are things you should probably keep an eye out for. Those are the things that are the warnings before the bigger action comes. Because once those little dominoes start falling, guess what? There's only so much between you and whatever's happening. And as a public figure now, I make sure I bump up those protections every time a new book comes out, because people start talking about you, your name comes up in conversation more often. People are reminded that you exist. And so it's a little bit more important that time of the year. So if it's someone that I've worked with, it's a client, it's someone who's taken my classes, like, what's going on in your life that you think this might be an issue? It's not necessarily a who, but you can work your way around to that who by going, okay, what's new? One of the things that I, especially for my friends who are a little bit more plant inclined, every full moon, I take a walk around the property, make sure everything's kosher, everything's where it's supposed to be. I notice if any new plants have popped up, because that is a big sign, especially from our practitioner's standpoint. When I'm at, oh my goodness, it was probably 8 years ago, I was walking the property right around the full moon, and between the last moon and this moon, 8 or 9 poke plants popped up along the edge of a fence in the backyard. Okay, poke is poisonous. It's that big leafy purpley droops of berries. Everybody's mom screams, don't touch it, they're poison. Okay, if they're poisonous, they can protect you, they can protect themselves. Okay, so what is behind me that I didn't see that they're protecting me from? Like, something's definitely happening. It's not one plant that just appeared overnight. So I start going through my protection list. What's new? What's going on? I found out I had a stalker. It was very serious. The police needed to be involved. There was some heinous things happening. It was as a result of my security job, not my witchy people. But it was a very dangerous situation. There was some police involvement. There were some charges filed. There was a trip to court. But I honestly think that if I hadn't understood what was going on, if I hadn't had that opportunity that Poke gave me saying, hey, you should check into this, I honestly think I would not be here.
Wow.
It was some serious business.
That's powerful. And so that's just paying attention always, like you say, keep, do it, whether you choose it at the full moon, do your whole walkabout, pay attention. If anything has changed, that's huge.
It's impactful, but it's so easy to do. Yeah. People get worked up and they can tell that their shoulders come up to their ears. They're saying, oh, I don't know what to do. Take a look around. Mm-hmm. The spirits, deity, whoever that you work with, they're going to figure out a way to tell you what's up. You just have to stop scrolling long enough to look up from your phone and figure out what's going on.
Pay attention. Yeah.
It's hard to do, but it's so easy for them to communicate once we give ourselves the minutes.
Yeah, be willing to accept that they're there. Yes. And wanting to work and help, right?
I love the advice of stop scrolling for a bit and pay attention to life too. That's something I think everybody could use, whether mundane or magical.
Yeah, I mean, think back to this time 2 years ago. Everything was shutting down. Everyone was staying home, and the number of statuses on social media, whatever port you were plugged into, talking about, oh my goodness, there's so many more birds around. There's so many more bugs around. Like, no, honey, they have always been there. You were just living in your phone and haven't been able to look outside. You have not looked outside your windows in so long, you forget how many birds are in your neighborhood. Just giving yourself permission to look up for a bit.
Yeah, slow down, pay attention, smell the roses type of
Absolutely.
Thing.
There's so much pressure to perform whatever it is every minute of every day. The number of people who stop at a stoplight and pick up their phone to scroll, and because we're told we're supposed to be busy doing something every minute of the day,
Yeah.
like your productivity is not going to keep you safe from the rest of the world.
For sure. Well, and that leads kind of into one of my other questions I had for you, because a lot of the people that come to me for help or whatever, usually it ends up being actually them that's causing themselves harm, and them that is self-jinxing or self-hexing or whatever. And like you said, if you're in your phone all the time and things like that, that can just lead into that. So do you have any tips or tricks for perhaps noticing if you are self-sabotaging and maybe protecting yourself from that, so that you can live your best life or as your best self?
One of the things I very strongly recommend is stop being so hard on yourself. First of all, your self-worth is not derived by your productivity. Like, I know capitalism's job is to like tell you that you're the thing, you're the product, but taking some minutes, I don't care if it's 5 minutes where you lock yourself in the bathroom so no one can find you, to just close your eyes and breathe, because we're not allowed to just be right now at all. There's so much happening that when we get ourselves worked up, we're looking for the outside explanation as to why these things are happening. And a lot of those times, it's simply the fact that we are so wrapped up in making sure that we're covering all the bases every minute of the day, that you're working yourself up into a panic attack over literally nothing. Not all panic attacks are nothing. That's definitely not a thing. But we work so hard at trying to find the root cause of whatever bad thing that's happening. We're, again, cursing ourselves. So being told, oh, Susie is, hexing people. Oh, well, have I ever accidentally pissed her off? And would she be cursing me? Likely no. Real cursing takes time and energy and effort and materials and knowledge and all this other stuff. That if you just accidentally cut somebody off in traffic, might they give you the finger? That's quite possible. But does that mean that they want you to drive off the road into a tree? Absolutely not. If you feel that way, if you're feeling like there's just something working up and something bad could happen. I had one of my dearest friends in the whole world, Michael, called me in a panic one night. He said, I saw a magic fox or some thing that jumped out of the woods at him. He's like, okay, this is awful. I just feel like something bad is going to happen. And he had just resigned himself to wait and see what was going to happen. That is not a thing. You are a witch, my love. You are empowered to go and do and stop these things before they happen. You can throw a handful of salt at it. You can go home and take a shower with some protective oils and some herbs and make sure that you are as protected as you can be before that thing happens. But the best thing you can do is, when you feel that building up in your chest, is laugh in its face, because the very low level jinxes and things that come up in our daily life are easily defeated when you just laugh in their face. The opposite is also true. Just because someone says they're going to hex you, does it mean they're going to? No. I'd say 9 out of 10 times they want you to be so anxious and nervous about the thought of them maybe cursing you that you curse yourself. They didn't have to do anything. I didn't have to light a candle. I didn't have to do anything. You cursed yourself. I'll be over here drinking a martini. Like, have a nice day. So just being able to laugh at it takes out so much of the work. If you just stop and realize that magic sees the path of least resistance. So if them telling you they cursed you and you can laugh at it, like, guess what? You just did most of the work for free.
That's great. I love that. Okay, so then with that, do you find, and since you have the protection magic just came out, self-care is coming out, do you have any tips or tricks for increasing that self-care so that people get themselves in a position where they're not doing that self-sabotage, that self-jinxing, that, where to maybe overcome that negative monkey mind talk, or, something along those lines?
My favorite one is to find the practice that you're currently just over the moon about. Maybe this week it's tarot, and sit and dedicate some time to practice or study, or because it gives us permission to turn off the rest of the world for 10 minutes, an hour, whatever it is, and be with yourself. I mean, if you look at the myriad number of things that exist in our society to keep us from talking to ourselves, I mean, drugs, alcohol, the movie theater, all of these things are trying so hard to keep us from understanding and from recognizing that we're pretty great people. You know, there's some scary stuff that lives in here sometimes. And the best thing we can do is to get in touch with it by looking away from it. Okay, this anxiety is a little, okay, let's pull out some tarot cards and think about what this card represents. Whether it's assigning a major arcana card, your favorite anime, or figuring out which of the people in your favorite TV show are represented by each card. It doesn't matter. It's giving yourself permission to just be for a few minutes. Even if it's hard to step away from the things that are trying to distract us, which are why we keep them around. There's some scary things that live out in our subconscious. But by giving yourself permission to connect to something outside of yourself, you're reminded that yourself isn't a bad place to be. It just takes time and a little bit of breath work, usually. Taking a deep breath is one of the most beautiful things you can do to care for yourself, because we live in our society, we live in the top 10% of our lungs. Very shallow breaths, lots of movement, lots of things. But if you can engage your belly when you breathe, you're using up a good part of that lung capacity. Guess what? Your shoulders come down, your stress comes down, your blood pressure comes down, and it didn't cost you anything. Just take a minute, take some breaths, and just be. Even for 30 seconds. 30 seconds can be an eternity when it's just you by yourself. But taking those deep breaths, it doesn't cost you anything. And it really gives you it's a great return on investment. All you need is to give yourself permission to not have to do anything or be anywhere for 30 seconds. Then you can build up from there. If you're actively in a moment, one of my favorite things to tell people is, run your hands or your wrists, especially your wrists, under cold water. Gets that vagus nerve and says, okay, everything's cool. We're fine here. You can put a little bit of salt in there if you feel a need for some cleansing and some purification. Buy a pack of gum. When your brain is freaking out, when your whole system is saying something bad is going to happen, chew some gum. What happens is it tells your brain, well, if I'm eating anything, I can't really be in peril because I wouldn't have time to stop and eat. So it tricks your brain into thinking, okay, things must not be all that bad. Snipers use this trick. Like it's very calming from your chest down. It gives you a place to be. It gives you something to do. And it tells yourself that things might be a little wonky, but I'm not running for my life. So things must not be that bad. And you can take down the stress note by note from there. But cold water and gum will save a lot of time and energy.
Fantastic advice. I love that. That's great. Now, one other thing that I noticed about your book that I find a lot of other authors have been afraid to touch on, probably because of how many dangerous practitioners there are out there. And you said earlier, if you have, 10 of these signs, go and get professional help. Well, one of the things a lot of people don't talk about is oftentimes when you go to get professional help, 9 out of 10 readers will tell you you're cursed just so that they can do hex breaking on you or something. Yep. What is your advice for people to watch out for that and to not put themselves into a dangerous situation and to protect themselves from that when they're trying to get help from a dangerous situation?
The first thing I always want to know is, how much is this going to cost me? An ethical practitioner will tell you up front, we're going to meet for a reading. It'll be $100 for an hour. We're just going to hang out and talk. It should be around the same cost as other related services like Reiki or massage therapy in your area. So if you're in San Francisco, it might be $200 an hour. If you're in Arkansas, it might be $50 an hour. The market determines the price, but it should be very close to what those practitioners are charging. If you're hanging out with a tarot practitioner or a medium, it should be around that price point. But if they're saying, I'll light a candle for you. I just need $10,000, and I'm not going to keep it. We're just going to set it on fire and burn your curse away. This is one of the oldest tricks in the book. It's really incredible the things that people do and the amount of ingenuity people have in separating people from their money. But the harder someone works to tell you they don't want your money, the harder they're working to get it. An ethical practitioner will just tell you up front, here's the price list. If you need me to come out to your house and do a cleansing, here's my materials list. Here's how long it'll take, and this is how much you should expect to spend. But if the word 1,000 ever comes out of anyone's mouth, that's the big flag that says, thanks, but no. So you can go into your local metaphysical shop and ask if they have practitioners that they recommend, that they can point you in the right direction. But just pulling up to a place with a neon hand in the window is not going to get you the things that you're thinking it will. Just go in there with an open mind and really understand what's happening. One of the very, very easy techniques that gets used is the cards are pre-layered to come out in a certain pattern. Oh, it's the death card. Oh, there's the tower. Like every bad card you've ever had an anxiety moment about comes up in the first 2 minutes you're there. Guess what, pumpkin? This is a scam. Let's go outside.
That is fair.
If you want to sneak, if you were wondering how all these things work, how specific scams happen, one of the best things I can tell you is to go on Hulu and check. Oh my goodness, I just lost the name of the series. For Jeffrey Donovan from Burn Notice is the gentleman he's the protagonist of the show. It's a great show, and I'll think of it in a second.
It'll come back.
Really fantastic. It's the entire world of this particular show is in with the Roma families and how they work through psychic parlors. Really neat stuff. It's a fictional show, but the obviously the ideas are real.
For sure. All right, you've been kind of quiet there, Ma, and I know you have some questions. So what you got going on?
I couldn't. This is all great. It's all it's wonderful. What was I doing? I watched you actually on another podcast, and you were saying about your cooking, and you do this pork loin with cocoa and things. And I was
my goodness, yes.
I need to hear more about that. So you're just so well-rounded. There's just so many things about Amy Blackthorn.
I had a whole cookbook that I wanted to do, and it's very difficult to publish a cookbook because there's, everyone's got their own niche, and it's difficult to do. So I was really tickled that I got to sneak some recipes into Blackthorn's Botanical Brews. So in the very back, there's a chapter on what to do with your individual potions that you might not have some left over. What do I do with it? You could pour it out as a libation to a spirit. You could do all sorts of things, but that cocoa rubbed pork tenderloin is one of my absolute favorites. I use cocoa as a dry rub for this big hunk of pork tenderloin, and I sear it in the skillet on both sides for about 5 minutes while it's simmering. While it's burning cocoa is not a great smell, so make sure you keep your windows open. But while that's all coming together, I actually make a really beautiful apple cider reduction. So it's 3 cups of apple cider and 1/3 a cup of apple cider vinegar, a little bit of syrup for sweetness, and I just let it reduce by probably about half while I'm searing this beautiful pork loin. I've got the oven heating up to about 400 degrees. And once I sear that on both sides and my reduction has reduced, I put them together, slide it in the oven for about half an hour, depending on the size of the loin. And it comes out spectacularly. If you want to have a nice pork loin, you get some mashed potatoes, that reduction goes over the potatoes, perfect. But I've also made the same style and sliced it real thin to put on sandwiches for, a cookout in July.
Right.
I absolutely love that reduction. I also put my favorite technique in that whole book. People are gaga for lavender. Lavender cocktails, lavender teas, lavender everything. you can turn anything into a lavender recipe. You just add 1 teaspoon of fresh or dried lavender per 1 cup of white sugar that goes into the recipe. So if you're making lavender lemonade, it calls for 3 cups of sugar. You do 3 teaspoons of lavender flowers. You make lavender sugar cookies. I make a really amazing lavender lemonade cookie with frozen concentrate lemonade. Any
And is
recipe
that
you want.
also in the Botanical Brews book?
Yes, it is. There's a whole section on
Nice.
lavender. There's
Nice.
a lavender gin that we infuse.
Ooh.
There's lots of really nice stuff in there. And they take the idea of lavender revealing secrets. You put it in a little bit of booze, and guess what? Now you have a tongue loosening spell. And you want someone to spill all their secrets. Here you go.
I'm loving that.
That's awesome.
So do you grow all the herbs in your own home, or?
I grow a lot of them, but the things that I grow, I used for my own purposes. The stuff that I put in the teas, I want to make sure that it has an origin and it's got, a certification and all that stuff. So make sure that, these things are USDA certified organic, or they're the in-depth materials. So I don't use things that I grow in the things that I sell, but I do use them at home and with practitioner friends. I just don't with selling tea and whatnot. So there's stuff that is from China. Obviously, it's not going to have the USDA certification, but I want to make sure that the people who I employ through creating these teas are making the best product they know how. So I do orthodox planting versus buying someone from unorthodox tea producer. The difference is how it's grown. So in orthodox considered tea, they grow on the side of a mountain. In China, they're hand-picked leaf by a real person. They've been in this for their 6th generation of tea planting and meticulous care, versus unorthodox, where they take it's a flat place of land, and they take we'll call it a lawnmower on stilts, down the top of the tea plant. It's crush, tear, and cuts the leaf and sends it into a bag. So you get feathers, bird nests, bugs, all sorts of beautiful things are indiscriminately picked up by that lawnmower. So you see, when you have a whole leaf in front of you versus a tea bag, the small particles, it'll brew quickly because there's the number of exposed edges. It'll make a cup of tea in a minute, but you're definitely not getting the same result as a practitioner who's been doing this their whole lives, who goes out and knows which tea leaf is the right one and which one isn't, which one's not ready yet, which one's overripe. Then getting them to, for example, with a Lapsang Souchong, they take these beautiful leaves and they dry them over a pine fire. The smoke from that pine fire is what dries the leaves. You can taste that. It's not artificial smoke flavoring. It's just smoke.
That sounds
so.
These are all
really
found in your tea house as well, right?
Yes.
Like this, it's a whole other layer here we go.
Yeah. When I left my last post in my security work, it had gotten to the point where I had been, because I was in charge, I was, top of the food chain, I responded directly to the owner of the company, not, Joe in maintenance or Bob across the street. So 2 o'clock in the morning, I'm putting out literal fires. If someone couldn't come in, if someone had an illness and they had to leave, I'm putting all those things on, making sure everyone's taken care of. But it means that I didn't have the energy to be me. I couldn't be a good partner. I couldn't be a good witch. I couldn't be a good anything because I was exhausted all the time. I was irritable from having to juggle 20 personalities. So-and-so doesn't like this guy, doesn't want to work on shift with that guy. It's a lot. So I said, I need to not be here. I trained my replacement. I left, and on my very first day as a joyfully unemployed person, I went down to my kitchen and I got out my giant cauldron. I set it on the counter. I got a great big pillar and some of the oil that I make. And I'm dressing the candle and I'm talking to it, telling it I need all this stuff. I got to get rid of the crap from my last job. I'm just bound up. I can't be myself. I need to get rid of all this baggage so I can figure out what the next thing is. And so I'm talking to myself. My partner wasn't home. Like I got the house to myself. The dogs are confused. So I'm ready to light the lighter to the wick. And the doorbell rang. And I left. I said, this is the fastest magic I've ever done. Like I didn't even have to light it yet. The very fabulous postal worker, I signed something. I come back in the kitchen. And all I can smell is the lemongrass and this oil just permeating the whole kitchen. And so I go to light the wick and the light bulb goes on over my head saying, you know, if I had a tea that had these same herbs as this oil, I could continue working my spell while I'm sipping my tea and keeping my attention focused on that candle to manifest whatever I'm looking for. So now I need this tea to be this magic. And next thing I knew, I had 15 tea recipes in my brain. So I'm still using the same spiral notebook from 8 years ago, but the magic is right there. And I'm over 100 recipes now. You can actually, there's a peek. See right there. Those shelves are all full of teas.
Nice.
Yeah. Wow.
Awesome.
So yeah, I'm over 100 teas, and there's everything from a deity line of teas. So if you really like working with the Dagda or the Morrigan or Hecate, or there's so many different pieces. You can have a tea you can leave tea for your devotional partner. If you want to work with Diana today and Hecate tomorrow, like they've got their own teas. There's astrological for the original planets. So I can have a Venus tea, which is tastes like strawberry jam. There are the traditional oils that I started with. Those all have their own teas. It was really interesting trying to figure out how to make oils with no edible components into a tea. Run Devil Run oil has, steel wool and iron filings and things that are definitely not, you don't want to put that in your body. So you have to look at the astrological and the magical equivalencies of what that oil is trying to do and then translate into something that you can eat. So it turned into a really beautiful Ceylon black tea with black peppercorns. Black pepper makes sweet things taste sweeter. So you're actually getting this really beautiful sweet instead of what you would imagine is puckery and peppery and sort of shrinks your whole face. Instead, it's this really lovely blend that gets things moving while still tasting really lovely.
That's awesome. That's some
And
great.
so how do we get your teas? Tell us.
You can have all of my teas. There's blackthornsbotanicals.com. It'll take you right to the website. There are individual little sample packs. We call them panacea pouches for whatever ails you. So you can, if you want to try deity teas or you want to try some black teas, you can pick which style of tea makes the best, or you can just let me pick 6 or 12 teas that I think really works for whatever's going on. There are individual sized tins that are about 2 ounces. And then there's the larger 4-ounce tins. That same place where you can find autographed copies of all my books. There are some magical oils from Blackthorn's Botanical Magic. There's a couple oils in there that are A, popular, and B, sort of hard to make. So I give you the option of just picking them up. My favorite one is the Hex Shattering Oil from that book. It's, oh my God. There's a...
You can smell-o-vision there. I can tell that.
The main ingredient in this is oak moss, absolute. So oak moss, you see the green lichen that sticks to the trees here in the eastern great deciduous forest. It's a beautiful green lichen that's very vibrant when it starts to rain. In magic, it's hex breaking. So you can stuff a poppet with this beautiful moss or the lichen and use it for hex breaking anything that's come your way. You can work your magic on a little poppet of yourself filled with that beautiful, beautiful scent. In perfumery, oak moss absolute smells like leather and violets. So it's used as an organic replacement for fake leather scent. It's really, really lovely. There's also some neroli and some petitgrain in there. So you get a little citrus high right up here that brightens up your energy so that things can't stick to you. So it's gentle enough to be worn as a perfume. It's strong enough to break really nasty hexes.
That's super awesome. If you have time here, Amy, I just actually had a late Patreon question come in for you.
Sure.
And they are wondering, from the wonderful Amy Blackthorn, if you have any tips or tricks for communing with the spirits of the herbs and plants, or awakening them so that they can get the most efficacious incenses or teas or whatever powders they're making or whatever, but they want to be able to commune with the spirits of the plants and really activate them to get the best potential out of them.
They win the best question category. One of the things that I love talking about when working with plants is say you go and you decide to get a little mint plant and you put it in your front yard. You're going to grow mint so you can have mint for tea. What happens when we cut those plants? You can dry it, you can grow it fresh. What happens is that leaf or that vine, that particular plant material goes away. You compost it, that goes away, but the spirit of peppermint doesn't. The spirit of peppermint endures. So whether you're working with it as an essential oil, you're working directly with the plant, maybe you have some really gorgeous peppermint incense. The spirit of peppermint is going to stay the same, no matter how you interact with its face. For example, when you're working with the essential oils, I really think of this as the soul of that plant. You're connecting with who peppermint is on the inside. So connecting with that overarching spirit of peppermint. The best thing I love to do is you can print out a picture from Amazon or Google image search, peppermint. You can find all sorts of really lovely, whether it's hand-drawn art or it's an actual picture. Find the image that speaks to you most strongly and start there. You can pull it up on your phone, you can print it out on a printer. Doesn't matter how you interact with that image, but just that you have it. Because what you're going to do is you're going to sit where you theoretically won't be disturbed. Close your eyes, and I want you to go and visit a garden in your mind. There's a smaller percentage of people who can't do pictures in their head. There's a separate method that if you have that issue, you can feel free to contact me. I'll walk you through it. But visiting the garden in your mind, I want you to see yourself walking up to your spirit guides, whoever keeps you safe in the other. And together you're going to journey and visit the spirit of peppermint. Because each of these very beautiful plant materials has their own overarching spirit. They may have a completely different message for you than cardamom wood or lavender wood or clove wood. But each one of those messages is the right one for right now. How can you tell if you're projecting or you're making something up in your head versus a real and true vision, a real and true experience? My favorite way to say it is if you're surprised with the things that they say. If you just say, oh, I'm going to go to Longwood Gardens and I'm going to meet Joe Bob under a tree, and then Peppermint is going to tell me I'm a cool person, I never have to do any work ever again. That's all well and good. But that is a projection. That is not coming to a place of understanding and connection. That's just like, oh, hey, I wrote a nice story in my head, which is perfectly valid if you want to write a story. But if you want to have a genuine experience, allowing yourself to be surprised is going to be the best way to know that you actually had a true experience with whichever spirit that you're looking to commune with. And you can go back to your starting place, we'll say the garden at Longwood, because that's where I go. And you and your spirit guide can meet with lime or benzoin or frankincense. Excuse me. You can have multiple journeys within the same time frame. You don't have to go and come back. There we go. You can have multiple journeys. I always suggest you take a notebook and a pen with you so you can write this down, because you will not remember it. I promise you will not remember. Oh, I have a great memory. You are not living in your memory right now. You're living in the part of your brain that's outside somewhere else. So once you come back into your body, once you come back to awareness of yourself, write that down, and then you can go and do whatever it is you're going to do. But make sure you write it down, because you will not remember it. And that's okay. That's not the place where it was meant to be. You're not supposed to need to remember it. You can just, that's why my black belt teacher always said, that a short pencil was better than a long memory. So write it down.
I like that. That's some great advice. And so then when you go and you journey to these spirits, then say for example, you're going to make a protection tea, or you're going to make a protection powder or whatever. Do you then petition those spirits and say, I need you to please activate this herb that I'm using or whatever for its best potential for such and such a purpose? Or how do you go about, activating individual ingredients?
When I am writing the recipe, that's what I do. Like I look for what this plant is looking to add to that recipe. And then when I'm actually physically making that tea, each one goes with its own intention, but I don't have to do the spirit journey because we've already had that discussion. I've got the recipe written down. So I think of it more as active blending, where I'm taking big varieties of different plants and I'm putting them together. That's when I can put that intention in there and make sure everybody's on the same plane. But the neat thing that I've noticed in 8 years of doing this professionally, it's so easy to do earth scrying without meaning to. I wasn't intending to scry today, but mixing these herbs, especially since I do it in such an active way, it's very calming and very peaceful. It lulls you into a place where it makes it very easy to connect and to commune with those spirits, because you're already in a lower place. It doesn't need a lot of active working. It's not very big movements. You're just mixing these pieces together, making sure they have the right vibe, to make sure they're connecting well. And it lends itself to surprise messages, we'll say.
Almost like you've created your own form of sortilege without even meaning to.
Correct.
That's good. Well, this has been absolutely fantastic, Amy. Thank you for coming on today. And that was a very enlightening discussion. So yeah, thank you for being here. We really enjoyed that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So great to meet you. It's just a true pleasure. Like, wow.
Thank you so much.
So everything, all amyblackthorn.com, that's where we find everything of you.
Each book, the first 2 chapters of each book, you can find for free to download at amyblackthorn.com. When the preview is available for Botanical Wellness, it'll go up there. Right now you can learn the first 4 books that I have. All the first 2 chapters of the first 4 books are free to download. You can check that and make sure where you can find me. And then if you want to check out some teas or ritual oils or autographed copies of my books, you can check out blackthornsbotanicals.com. It'll take you directly to my Shopify shop. I am everywhere on social media. There's fun things to do on TikTok. There's Instagram, Facebook. Just look for Amy Blackthorn author in all of these places. You'll find some fun things. We've done the herbal dating game on TikTok every so often. Well, I flip through Botanical Magic here and talk about some of the magical equivalents and magical things that we talked about. So the magical correspondences of chamomile would be blessings, healing, and sleep. And so I say, okay, would you date this plant if they're going to help with your blessings and sleep? Chamomile is also really good for gambling luck, in case you didn't know. People like to wash their hands in chamomile tea before they go out gambling. You can keep a little sachet of chamomile in the attic to keep your house safe from lightning. So we talk about the individual little things that these plants can do when we're working together, and it's just fun.
That's great.
It's been amazing. It's been incredible. We are just so grateful that you said yes and you were here, and thank you.
Thank you. This just made my whole night.